Hi, my name's Greg and I work for a company called Code Enigma, and we do advanced Linux and PHP hosting solutions, and this video is a quick demonstration of some of our more advanced deployment tools for WordPress developers. So I'm actually going to start by looking at the code. This is our version control system. It's called GitLab. If you haven't heard of GitLab, it's like GitHub, but it's an open source self-hosted solution and one of several pieces of software that we can actually offer as a hosted service if you need it. And what we've got here is a WordPress installation that I have been playing around with. I just call it WordPress test. The first few things I'd like to pull out for you are the git config file, the config.ini file, sorry, that works with our deployment system. So I'm just going to open that. Now on more complex projects there'll be a lot more in this than 2 lines, but basically config.ini is the base file for any deployment job that is run by hosted Code Enigma systems. And so what we've got here is basically just a couple of lines saying this is a development job. So that tells the system that it should use the master branch of your Git repository. And it also tells us that we should be deploying to a particular server, in this case dev1.codeenigma.com. So it allows you, as you build up environments and projects, to actually control where they go and where they're deployed by editing this simple text file inside your repository. Next, you'll notice that the www folder, which is actually where WordPress itself is installed. So everything that is actually WordPress is inside this www folder. That's really just for housekeeping. Dropping back a level again, we could add a DB folder in here, and we could put a zipped database dump in that DB folder, and if we did that, the automated deployment scripts we're going to look at in a moment would automatically pick up that database dump and install it along with the WordPress site. So going on to the actual automated deployment of WordPress, this is our WordPress script, which is basically a whole bunch of stuff that we need to do in order to deploy a new WordPress website. And these are all the manual steps that you would usually go through as a WordPress developer, but they've been captured in one single Python script using a system called Fabric that allows us to execute this script remotely on other servers. So let's hop over to Jenkins and see these deployment scripts in action. So if I go over there, this is a Jenkins build based on our standard WordPress build, which has not been enabled yet. So this has never been built. It's waiting for me to click the enable button, which I will do right now. And rather than hang around waiting for it to notice that it has a repository and build, I'm going to click this build now button just to wake it up. And there you can see it says build pending, and off it goes. So this is now deploying our WordPress website from the repository we were just looking at for the first ever time. And if I now click on the build number, it's finished. I've got a green light to tell me it's successful. If I click on console output, I can actually see that script we were just looking at in its entirety having been run. So we can see that the script checks out the code, it makes backups if necessary, it checks the config file, works out what server it should be operating on. It then realizes it's got a new build, it starts setting up new config files, it creates a shared uploads directory for your WordPress uploads. After it's done all that, it creates the database username and password, installs the database, does a bunch of service restarts and reports back that it's finished. Indeed, it then also tells us what the URL should be, but happily I've also got an email from WordPress itself which appeared telling me that my WordPress site has been successfully set up. So let's just test that. I'll click on that link and drag the tab over here, and there is my successfully built for the first time WordPress test site. So that's all fine and dandy. We've done our first build. We can see that that worked. What does this mean moving forward though? Well, to do that and demonstrate that, I'm going to jump over to the terminal for a minute. So here's a Linux terminal. I've already gone into the checked out Git repository of my WordPress demo, and if I list, you can see that I'm in the same folder as the one that we were looking at on the user interface of GitLab. I've got my config.ini file and I've got my www folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that you're a WordPress developer and you want to release some new plugins into the system, and you don't want to do it through the automated installer of WordPress, because you want to get things in version control and so on and so forth. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do it in Git. So the first thing I'm going to do is obviously cd over into the correct folder, the plugins folder for WordPress. I'm going to pull down a plugin. I'll use this WP-FFPC plugin, the WordPress Flash Full Page Cache, which can work with Memcache on our servers to actually make WordPress page cache perform better. So I'm going to copy that address, go back to the terminal, and just pull down the zip file, and I'm going to unzip it. Oops. And then I'm just going to remove the zip file because I don't want that. And then if I do a git status, we can see an unstaged folder. If I just add that folder, then git status again, we can see all the files of that plugin are staged and ready to commit. So I will commit this. Oops. Adding the WP FFPC plugin for WordPress. Stop. So I've committed that. The last thing for me to do is do a git push. So I push that up to GitLab. Indeed, if I go back to GitLab and refresh and go in www WP content plugins, I can see indeed there's my commit, adding the WP FFPC plugin for WordPress less than a minute ago. And if I go over to Jenkins, remember, is continuously polling our repository for changes. Okay, so anything that you push up, after a few seconds, Jenkins will actually notice and will start a new build to deploy what you've pushed up. So we can see there we got build number 2 is now in a pending state, and it should actually operate any minute now. And what we'll see is Jenkins going through the same motions of automatically carrying out the steps that are required to actually build a Jenkins WordPress site on a server that normally as a developer you would have to go through manually. It's done those automatically for us in about 20 seconds flat. And we can see again from the console output that it's checked out our code, it's created a new build, it's realized this time that there is an existing build, so it's backed up the database just in case we have a problem and we need to roll back, and then it's actually gone and built our replacement code and put that in place. So now our live website actually has a working copy of the WP FFPC plugin on it. So that's good. So let's go and log in to our WordPress website just to demonstrate that all is well. If I log in, we've got pretty much what you'd expect to see, and if I go to plugins, we can see there is the WP FFPC plugin that I just had pushed up with my latest build, so that's all good and working, and you can see perfectly normal WordPress working on one of our servers, pretty snappy, no problem, automatically built by Jenkins. The last thing I'd like to show you is that this couldn't actually have occurred without the WP CLI tool, which is an excellent tool. If you're not familiar with it, it's a command line interface for WordPress, which is very similar to the Drush command line tool for Drupal that we use a lot on our Drupal projects. If I go on to one of our dev servers here, we've actually packaged this as a Puppet module. so that you can install it automatically on servers if they're a WordPress server. We've packaged it as a Debian.deb package, so if you are an Ubuntu or Debian user, then you are welcome to install it from our repository, which is packages.codenigma.com. And just to demonstrate that that's here, on our dev server here, if I type the WP command, you can see that I get a list of things that I can do, and there's the full help command there. So I don't know, for example, if I want to clear the cache, I can see the help for the cache command tells me the various things I can do. So if I want to flush the object cache, then what I can do is I can say WP, use the path parameter to tell it where my WordPress site is. Oops. I'm just going to cheat a bit so this auto completes. So if I set the path to where I know my WordPress site lives, and then go cache flush, oops, I'll spell it right, you can see success, the cache was flushed on that particular path. And so that's all there is to say really about that. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you're interested to know more about our services. If you are, give us a shout or visit our website at www.codenigma.com. I'm Greg from Code Enigma. Hope you enjoyed this little demonstration.